On today's show, the Houston Rockets with a major blown opportunity, losing to the Golden State Warriors without Jimmy Butler in Game 3 of this series. Amen Thompson and Alperen Sengun struggles against the Warriors' defensive adjustments and a lineup change that we absolutely need to see. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Also check out our Locked On Rockets newsletter. Would sincerely appreciate all of that support. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. Rockets fall to the Jimmy Butler-less Golden State Warriors 104-93 in Game 3. They go down 2-1. One more game left to play in the Bay Area Monday night, and you do not want to go down 3-1. That is a death sentence in a series. So the next game in the series becomes an absolute must win. But this is a game that the Rockets are going to wish they had back. Jimmy Butler did not play. He was a late scratch in this one. He's a game time decision, actually, so not a late scratch. The Warriors electing to start Quentin Post and Jonathan Kuminga and moving Moses Moody to the bench with no Jimmy Butler in the lineup. And those, especially Quentin Post, that'll play into some of the Rockets' struggles here in this game. But look, this was another rock fight, another very closely contested game, and a game that the Rockets were actually leading going into the fourth quarter. They had a 2-point lead going into the fourth quarter. They had a 3-point lead at halftime before they let the Warriors go on a 9-0 run to cut into the 12-point lead that they could have had going into halftime. And they were actually leading this game with just under 6 minutes left to go. Dillon Brooks canned a three-pointer, and the Rockets were up 84-83 with 5:47 left to play, and the Warriors went on a 21-9 run to close out the game and take the win. And we're going to break it all down. We're going to get into some of the Warriors' defensive adjustments that really hurt the Rockets offensively. We'll get into the game flow and kind of what went wrong at various points in this game for the Rockets, and a lineup change that we desperately need to see this team make. But let's start with the big thing here, and that's the Rockets offense continues to be a problem. And it's a problem in part because of how the Warriors are defending certain actions. Look, you knew after Jalen Green's eruption for 38 points in Game 2 that the Warriors were going to respond, that they were going to adjust and do everything that they could to take Jalen Green out of the series again. And that's what they did in Game 3. They went back to Draymond Green as the primary ball screen defender whenever he was on the floor. And that meant that every time Jalen Green tried to get into a pick and roll action, he had Draymond Green either, playing at the level of the screen or blitzing him or waiting on him, picking him up, when he tried to get downhill and get ahead of steam, or contesting him at the rim. And that made life incredibly difficult for Jalen Green in this game. The Warriors basically turned Jalen Green into a facilitator. And because Jalen Green was receiving so much defensive pressure, it gave other players on the floor for the Rockets plenty of opportunities to score against a Warriors defense that was in rotation, that was recovering. And the two guys in particular that were the recipient of a lot of these opportunities offensively, but failed to capitalize on them, were Alperen Sengun and Amen Thompson. This game by Alperen Sengun was a far cry from how he played in Game 1. Honestly, it very much felt like he got in his head a little bit in this game, and it very much felt like he was playing scared in this game. Just 15 points on 7 of 18 shooting. He did have 11 rebounds and 4 assists, but he was also 1 of 6 at the free throw line. 1 of 6. Like that shows some serious kind of confidence issues, I guess. Some frustration bleeding over from Sengun, probably for the missed bunnies, the missed dunk that he had in the first quarter of this game. He was not playing his best game of basketball, and it definitely showed in his indecision and his confidence as the game wore on. There were opportunities that he had later in this game where he would catch the ball and there wouldn't be a Warriors defender anywhere near him, and he would hesitate. He didn't know what to do, whether to shoot or to pass or to put the ball on the floor and make a move. He had Brandon Pajemski on a switch one time right there under the basket and couldn't take advantage of it. Like, there were a lot of really missed opportunities by Sengun to capitalize in this game, especially with how much defensive attention Jalen Green was generating in this one. You needed Alperen Sengun to have a stronger performance than he did, and that was one contributing factor to the Rockets' offensive struggles, not getting enough out of Alp. But the other one, and arguably the bigger one here, and this is going to be the one that the Rockets have to figure out an answer for, Amen Thompson he really struggled in this game. He's really struggled all series. He's struggled to contain Steph Curry. Kind of some poor game plan discipline from Amen Thompson at times. Miscommunication on switches, not fighting over screens, biting on pump fakes, like things that we haven't really seen Amen Thompson do before. And it's really hard to try and contain Steph Curry. I'm not expecting Amen Thompson to put the clamps on Curry, but there were just moments that he was flat out killing this team on the defensive side of the floor, which is not usually the case, right? Usually Amen Thompson is the best defender on the floor for the Rockets. And he still has great moments here and there, but Steph Curry is getting the better of him in this series. So much so that we saw near the end of this game, we saw Ime Udoka elect to have Amen Thompson guarding other players not named Steph on the floor, right? We saw Dillon Brooks guarding some Steph Curry. We saw Fred VanVleet guarding Steph Curry a little bit. We saw other guys, even with Amen Thompson on the floor, checking Steph Curry as his primary defender. Now, some of that might just be by game plan design, but some of it might also have been Ime Udoka saying, hey, all right, Amen's struggling with keeping Steph in check. Let me throw somebody else at him. But where Amen is really hurting the Rockets is on the offensive side of the floor. The Warriors started Quentin Post and were effectively able to hide Quentin Post defensively by having him guard Amen Thompson, because Amen Thompson right now is getting the Russell Westbrook treatment. There isn't a Warriors defender within like 10 or 15 feet of Amen Thompson when he catches the basketball on the perimeter. They don't even care what he's doing out there because they know that he's not a threat to shoot the ball. And that's allowing the Warriors bigs, or in this case, Quentin Post or Draymond or whoever's guarding Amen Thompson, to sag all the way down into the paint and get rid of driving lanes, provide help when Sengun goes to make his move, or if Fred or Jalen get that dribble penetration, they beat their man on the perimeter, and it's just mucking up the Rockets offense. And then to make matters worse, Amen Thompson wasn't able to capitalize on many of the opportunities where he caught the ball on the perimeter and was able to get a head of steam and try and attack Quentin Post by getting downhill. Credit to Quentin Post. He had some really phenomenal defense in this game. He defended well. He rebounded well. He had 4 assists. Didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but he did everything else really great for the Warriors. Like, his number was called and he delivered. And Amen Thompson talked a little bit about it post-game, that his touch around the basket was off, that he was missing shots that he would normally make. And that may be the case, but until Amen Thompson proves with consistency and regularity that he is able to punish an opposing team for parking a big on him and sagging that big all the way off and giving him all that space, until he routinely proves that he can either A, knock down those perimeter shots and keep the defense honest, or B, that he can drive and get downhill and still elevate or attack the defense and still convert, either by getting to the free throw line or by generating, or by scoring over the top of the defense. Until he can do that, he is going to be an Achilles heel for this Rockets team offensively. And we saw that on full display in Game 3. The Warriors absolutely exposing Amen Thompson. Coming up, let's talk about the adjustments that we saw from both of these teams in this game. The Warriors' defensive adjustments that really hurt the Houston Rockets, and the Rockets needing more out of really everybody on the floor in this game. We'll talk about that, as well as the lineup change that the Rockets need to make in this series. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Look, basketball and hockey playoffs are here, and there's no better time to turn your sports knowledge into real cash with Prize Picks, the top destination for daily fantasy action. Prize Picks makes it so simple. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and you're in. You can even mix and match players across basketball, hockey, baseball, and more for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. For this week, I'm picking Jalen Green for more than 25 points and Alperen Sengun for more than 5 assists. It really is that simple. Plus, with their promos like Taco Tuesday and Flex Friday, you can get in on even more action. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Okay, a couple of the changes that the Warriors made that really hurt the Rockets here in this game. First off, to close things out, talked about the Rockets. They had a lead with just under 6 minutes to go in this game, 84-83. And it was at that point where Gary Payton II went on I can't call it a personal 9-0 run. I mean, it was a personal 9-2 run by GP2. But the Rockets defense was so keyed in on Steph Curry that they failed to contain Gary Payton II. And it happened very simply off of switched actions where GP2 would come up to set a screen for Steph and just slip the screen. And the Rockets were committing so much defensive attention to Steph Curry that GP2 was able to get just these straight line drives to the basket and just finishing through the Rockets defense. The second line of defense was not there to help. The first of which was probably a mistake by Alperen Sengun. Well, first and foremost, it's just committing too much attention to Steph Curry, which is hard to say because it's kind of like pick your poison. Do you want to, leave Steph Curry a little bit of room on the perimeter and maybe he bangs a 3 and then that puts you even further behind? Do you live with Gary Payton II catching the ball in the short roll after slipping the screen and trying to make him score over the top? I like it in theory, and it makes sense. You want to make other guys not named Steph beat you, but to let GP2 go on a 9-2 run all by himself. Now, 3 of those shots were assisted by Steph Curry. He had the 2 slips where he got straight to the rim and finished, either through or around a couple Rockets defenders. And then he had the corner 3-pointer where Steph drove in, drew the strong side defender, Amen Thompson, off of the strong side corner, which is a big no-no. You shouldn't do that. And was able to flip a ridiculous pass back out to GP2, and he canned the corner 3-pointer. I think the Rockets like their chances of playing the percentages of GP2, who has, in this series and in other big games, smoked wide open layups and struggled offensively and is not a good perimeter shooter. But the fact that it happened just hurts, right? It's one of those where it's one of those like, well, of course moments. Like, of course, GP2 scores 9 straight points to help put the Rockets away in the fourth quarter after the Rockets played really solid defense all game long. But that was an adjustment by Steve Kerr late in this game. He realized just how much the Rockets were loading up on Steph Curry defensively, and GP2 was able to capitalize on a lot of those opportunities. So I don't know if you go back and if you change it up, do things differently. I don't know if you just try to, maybe you put a little bit less pressure on Steph Curry and make him prove that he can beat you, which unfortunately we know that he can. But that was what really killed the Rockets defensively late in this game. And then offensively throughout the whole course of the game, I didn't talk about him too much there in segment 1, but Jalen Green, despite his really impressive performance in game 2, the Warriors did a really effective job of more or less taking him out of this game completely by utilizing Draymond Green as the ball screen defender. And that meant that Jalen was getting blitzed. He was getting trapped. If he did beat his man off, with the pick and roll action, then he had Draymond Green waiting for him, as he started to make his move to the basket. And Draymond is a much, much better defender than Quentin Post or Kevon Looney or the guys that were kind of checking him there in game 2. But not only that, there were opportunities that Jalen had where Draymond wasn't involved in those defensive actions. There were opportunities that Jalen had to attack and to get something going, either in straight up isolation with, Steph or Moody or Kuminga or whoever was guarding him. And he couldn't deliver in those moments either. So Jalen's not getting off scot-free here in this episode. Yes, the Warriors defense was entirely geared towards stopping him in this game. And there were a lot of, sending two to the ball and a lot of blitzes and a lot of things to basically force anybody not named Jalen Green to beat you in this game if you're the Warriors. But there were still moments where Jalen got, involved in a pick and roll action where Quentin Post was the ball screen defender, where he had isolation opportunities, where he had opportunities where he just couldn't quite turn the corner on his man, whether it was Pajimski, whether it was Moody, whether it was Kuminga. And those are the moments where you look at Jalen, and Jalen's got to be better too. 9 points on 11 shots is not going to cut it as a number one option. You can't just concede to only taking 11 shots. Like, there's got to be something more there. And if it's as simple as, okay, well, I can't call for a screen because if I call for a screen, then they're going to blitz it. And then, we're playing 4-on-3 and Amen and Alp don't have it tonight. Then you've got to figure out how you can attack a defender. You've got to call for a switch, get the defender that you want on you, and then figure out a way to go to work. The only three-pointer that Jalen hit was at the very end of the first quarter over Draymond Green. That's it. 1 of 5 shooting from outside. No free throw attempts for Jalen Green in this game. He did have 6 rebounds and 5 assists and only 1 turnover. So, largely the Rockets' offensive issues came from a majority of the other guys because the Warriors, again, did so much to take Jalen Green out of this game completely. But you also can't be content as the leading scorer on the team, as supposedly the number one option, of only taking 11 shots and being okay with that being the outcome. You can't live that way. You can't win a series that way. And to make matters worse, at the end of the game, Jalen got into it with Draymond Green. He did. He was, walking off the court, and it looked like Draymond and him were having words with each other. And Jalen said after the game that they were just talking, and that he said Draymond can't do much of anything else, so he's just talking. Unfortunately, Draymond's gotten the better of the Rockets so far in this series. He was everywhere defensively in this game, man. He was defending the ball screens. He was rotating over. He was making life hell for Alperen Sengun on the weak side, coming over as that secondary help defender at times. He was blowing up a lot of the Rockets' actions in the middle part of the floor when they did get, Amen Thompson or Alperen Sengun going downhill. And then, one of those guys would look to make a play for somebody else, be it Steven Adams or Tari Eason on the weak side or something. And then seemingly out of nowhere, it's like Draymond Green was like teleporting around the court. He was everywhere for the Warriors defensively in this game. Hat tip to him. He was pretty awesome in this game, which I hate having to say, but I'll call a spade, and he was awesome. And for the Rockets, they need more offensively. They do. You can't have your front court of Sengun and Amen Thompson struggle as much as they did. And Dillon Brooks, even though he was effective, he was limited because of the foul trouble in this game. And then even Fred VanVleet, who had a phenomenal start in this one. He had 13 points in the first quarter. 13 in the first. 4 of 6 shooting. He was awesome to start this game. And then just completely disappeared over the rest of the final 3 quarters. So after 13 in the first quarter, Fred VanVleet only had 4 points on 1 of 8 shooting the rest of the way. That's just flat out not good enough. It's not. Like, and some of this is credit to the Warriors and their defensive intensity and their game plan and their adjustments. Absolutely. But an even bigger part of it is just the Rockets shooting themselves in the foot. And I had to take a beat before I came in here and recorded this podcast. And I'm glad I did, because if I had recorded it right after the game, I probably would have started cussing guys out. But you look at the numbers from this game. Rockets had 15 turnovers in this one. The turnovers were killing them. You got to take better care of the basketball. And they really struggled to convert inside the arc. They shot just 39.7% on twos in this game. Under 40% on twos. You compare that to the Warriors, who shot 55.6% on twos in this game. Meanwhile, the other area that the Rockets left a lot of points on the board, the free throw line. They got to the free throw line 24 times in this game. That's 9 more trips than the Warriors, who only made it there 15 times. But they missed 10 of them. 14 of 24 at the free throw line. Already talked about Sengun's struggles at the free throw line, just 1 of 6 shooting there. But that absolutely has to be better. You know what's embarrassing, to be completely honest? The Warriors attempted to do the Haka Adams strategy, and he shot better at the free throw line than Alperen Sengun did. Steven Adams finished 4 of 6 at the free throw line compared to Alperen Sengun's just 1 of 6. That is unacceptable. That flat out cannot happen. And you cannot, in areas like this against a team like the Golden State Warriors, where the margin is so razor thin, you cannot lose this many different categories. They also lost the second chance points battle, and that was a big one. That just can't happen. The Rockets are a team that built their entire identity on offensive rebounding and cleaning up their mistakes and then getting those second and third chance opportunities. And they let the Warriors outscore them on second chance points, 18-11. There were so many moments for the Golden State. I think of Buddy Hield's 5 3-pointers, I want to say at least 2 or 3 of them came as a direct result of offensive rebounds and kickouts for wide open threes. Steph Curry at least had one of his threes was off an offensive kickout or an offensive rebound kickout. Like, that can't happen. You can't get beat in the one area that was an offensive strength for you throughout the entire season. So the second chance points battle, the free throw battle, the shots inside the arc that Amen Thompson and Alperen Sengun were missing like crazy, those just flat out cannot happen. And despite all of that, the margin was still so close that the Rockets were right there with under 6 minutes to go, and they were very much still in the game before some defensive miscues and miscommunications and errors led to GP2 with that 9-2 run, and then Steph Curry putting them away at the end. Like, it's just, that's kind of how the cookie crumbled. Rockets were the better team through about 3.5 quarters of this game, despite a Steph Curry masterclass performance, but they got the contributions they needed. They got the role players performing the way that they needed with GP2 and Buddy Hield off the bench, 16 and 17 points respectively for those guys. And now the Warriors, they won a game. That's what they needed. They got the rest for Jimmy Butler. They won game 3. They're likely to get Butler back in game 4, and game 4 becomes an absolute must-win game for this Houston Rockets team. Coming up, I do want to talk about the lineup adjustment that the Rockets absolutely need to look at making if they want to have a shot the rest of this series. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into different player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many different ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips-off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win an even bigger payout. Right now, unfortunately, the Houston Rockets are minus 3.5 underdogs, or I guess plus 3.5 underdogs in game 4 against the Golden State Warriors. But check out that and so much more action over at FanDuel.com. Don't miss out. Head on over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Look, I didn't talk about him in the first 2 segments because I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about him here in this final segment. The Rockets need to utilize Jabari Smith Jr. more in this series. And I think that we are fast approaching, if we're not already there completely, a point where the Rockets and Ime Udoka need to consider the idea of moving Amen Thompson to the bench and starting Jabari Smith Jr. over him. And it's for a variety of reasons. One, let's start with the offensive side of things. Amen Thompson has flat out struggled offensively in this series. He hasn't been the release valve that he needs to be offensively, playing the baseline and cutting in and, crashing the glass. It hasn't been as effective as it was in the regular season. And in game 3, especially, he was flat out exposed offensively. And knowing the Warriors, knowing Steve Kerr, knowing how a playoff series works, they're going to continue to expose him. Every moment that Amen Thompson is on the floor, the Warriors are going to ignore him. They're not going to guard him. And they're simply going to pack the paint, because even if Amen Thompson crashes in from the perimeter, whether it's the baseline, the outside, whatever, if he's crashing in, if his man's already there, then there's no damage that he can do. So that's going to be a major issue for the Rockets on the offensive side of the ball, and it's going to continue to plague them, whether it's Jalen Green not having driving lanes or Alperen Sengun having an extra man waiting on him to make his move down low when he's attacking the basket. Whereas you put Jabari Smith Jr. in his place, the Rockets suddenly have the adequate floor spacing around Jalen and Sengun to really utilize that two-man game where if the Warriors do blitz Jalen, then you make the pocket pass to LP. He gets to attack, and then he either is, driving and attacking and finishing at the rim, or if they send a defender over, then he sprays it out to whoever's wide open, whether it's Fred VanVleet, whether it's Dillon Brooks, whether it's Jabari Smith Jr., and you live with that. That is good, solid offense. And that's the type of offense that the Rockets really need to be able to rely on in this series. And look, maybe it doesn't necessarily require a starting lineup change, but you can't have Jabari, who's been an incredibly effective piece in this series, only getting 26 minutes off the bench. He needs more run. In game 3, he had 12 points on 4 of 8 shooting, and he was 3 of 5 from downtown. Like the one area that the Rockets actually didn't struggle in game 3 was their 3-point shooting. They were 39.3% from downtown, 11 of 28 overall. But you just need more of those attempts. You need to get up more 3-point shots. You compare the 28 threes that the Rockets took to the 45 threes that the Warriors took. They took 17 more threes than the Rockets did. And a big part of that is because the Rockets just don't have enough 3-point shooters on the floor. They don't have guys who are willingly going to let it fly when the Warriors defenders are double teaming and forcing the ball out of the hands of Jalen and all this other stuff. The Rockets need guys that are going to make the Warriors defense pay. And in game 3, if you had been able to even take 5 of those shots away from Amen Thompson, 5 or 6 of those missed shots away from Amen Thompson, and given them to Jabari Smith Jr., whether they be his midi pull-ups, posting up a smaller player, 3-point attempts, just catch and shoot from the perimeter, outcome of this game probably looks a whole hell of a lot different. And again, it's got that added benefit of having Jabari out there. Watch, when Jabari's on the floor, the Warriors do not leave him alone in the corner. They keep a man glued to Jabari Smith Jr., and that's one less help defender. That's one less guy rotating over. That's one less guy to blow up different offensive actions for the Rockets. The Rockets need to find a way to get Jabari Smith Jr. more minutes in this series. And in particular, the Rockets jumbo lineup has actually fared pretty well in some limited run this series, right? With Adams, Sengun, and Jabari all out there at the same time. The issue has largely been the production of the other two guys with those jumbo big lineups. Those guys are able to hold their own, and they've actually done a decent enough job defensively. But in game 1, right, the Rockets' backcourt was awful. Then in game 2, you had Jalen Green completely pop off, and we barely saw any double big lineup that game. And then we saw double big for like a cup of coffee in this one. But that's it. There's so much that Ime Udoka can do differently here. And whether that's running a little bit of Jabari Smith Jr. at the 5 and going to the kind of switch everything lineup defensively that the Rockets can utilize, or just giving him more minutes over other guys. What's wild is that Dillon Brooks was in foul trouble in this game, and Jabari still only wound up playing 26 minutes. That's kind of the crazy thing. He gave Amen Thompson 37 minutes, Fred VanVleet 41, Jalen Green 39. There's got to be a way to go a little bit deeper in your bench. And the other downside to only playing 8 guys is the Rockets are going to get tired quicker in these games. Yes, they're a young team. Yes, they've got younger, fresher legs than the Warriors do, but Steve Kerr hasn't been afraid to expand his rotation a little bit. In game 3, Steve Kerr ran a 9-man rotation. He only gave 17 minutes to Jonathan Kuminga and only 14 minutes to Kevon Looney off the bench, but his guys were more fresh in this game. Steph Curry played a game-high 41 minutes, tied with Fred VanVleet. But outside of that, the next highest minutes played for the Warriors was Draymond Green with 34. Like the main heavy hitters for the Rockets, Fred VanVleet 41, Jalen Green 39, Amen Thompson 37. And with the high-intensity play of playoff basketball, how physical this series has been, a little bit of added rest or spreading the minutes around a little bit more minutes for Jabari, a little bit more for Tari, maybe a little bit more for Steve-O could go a really long way in keeping some of these guys a little bit more fresh. But not only does Jabari provide a different look offensively and will help keep the Warriors defense honest, defensively, Jabari's been really solid in this series, and he gives the Rockets some defensive versatility. He gives them size, and he gives them rebounding. All the different times that the Warriors rebounded the ball and got offensive rebounds and got kickouts for extra threes in this game, those generally don't happen if you've got Jabari Smith Jr. in there, because he's got the length and the size to be aggressive on the boards. And especially if you've got Amen Thompson out on the perimeter chasing around Steph Curry, he's not in position to rebound to begin with. So then you're relying on basically just Alperen Sengun, and then a bunch of much smaller players in Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks to do the dirty work on the rebounding if Amen Thompson's out of position and can't attack the glass as much as needed. So, and in fact, only 7 rebounds for Amen Thompson in game 3, right? It feels like there's just too much to be gained from playing Jabari Smith Jr. alongside the other starters over Amen Thompson. And this isn't an indictment on Amen Thompson. This isn't to say he's a bad player or whatever. It's just, it might not be the series for him, right? And Jabari's skill set on both sides of the floor feels like it might be more conducive to winning against this iteration of this Golden State Warriors team. Now, maybe things change, right? With Jimmy Butler back for game 4, more than likely, the way that Warriors writers and the Warriors coaching staff and Steve Kerr's talking about their expectations ahead of game 4. Maybe Jimmy Butler's back and the Warriors go back to their kind of, undersized lineup with Draymond at the 5 and Jimmy Butler at the 4. And maybe then at that point, it makes sense to leave Amen Thompson in the starting lineup. But at least against this version of the Warriors, where they had Quentin Post out there, they had Kuminga and Draymond Green, and they had the size out there, and they were able to essentially not guard Amen Thompson on the offense, on the defense side of the floor. It really hurt the Rockets. And they're still able to do that, even if it's not with Quentin Post, whether it's Jimmy Butler or Draymond Green. They're still able to just ignore Amen Thompson offensively unless he's able to show that he can punish them. But you know who can punish them? Jabari Smith Jr. Jabari Smith Jr., you can't leave him alone from the three-point line. He will punish you from 3, and even if you run him off the three-point line, he can do a 1-2 dribble pull-up and then punish you from the mid-range. Jabari doesn't rely on those paint touches for him to be effective as a scoring option. And against a team that packs the paint as much as the Golden State Warriors do, the Rockets need other reliable scoring options besides just guys who can get it going in the paint. That's why Dillon Brooks has felt really effective in this series. He has, because DB can get it going in the mid-range. He doesn't rely on just getting downhill and scoring at the rim. He can put his back against you and then get to the little midi turnaround. He can knock down the threes on the perimeter. And so DB not being in foul trouble is also going to be a really big key in game 4. The Rockets just flat out need his offensive production. He had 8 of his 13 points there in the fourth quarter before fouling out. If Dillon Brooks doesn't foul out, this game probably looks a lot different, because then they have one of their best outlets to one of the best shooters, not even one of the best, the best shooter on the team in Dillon Brooks. They need him to stay on the floor just because, not even because of his defensive intensity, but because of his offensive production. Because this team just cannot put up enough points right now to deal with the Warriors. They've still played good enough defensively, despite those defensive miscues and the little 9-2 run from GP2. They still played good enough defensively to win this game. They did. It's been the offense, and credit to the Golden State Warriors for some of the defensive stuff that they've thrown, but it's also been the Rockets just shooting themselves in the foot. And one way to fix some of these offensive issues is to put a guy out there and give a guy more minutes that is just fully built to counter some of what the Warriors are doing defensively, and that is Jabari Smith Jr. With that, I would love your thoughts on game 3. What do you think was the biggest issue for the Rockets in game 3? What do you expect out of game 4 in this series? What adjustments would you like to see out of the Rockets and Ime Udoka? Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments, but that's going to do it for today's episode. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Also, check out our Locked On Rockets newsletter. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.